Today we are discussing corporate governance and ethics. What is the responsibility of the business? Milton Friedman, a very famous economist, once said that there is only one social responsibility of business, and that's to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits, so long as it stays within the rules of the game, essentially as long as it continues to conduct business legally. However, a lot of people would disagree with Milton Friedman. This chart shows you that in the US, roughly 50% of the informed public agree with Milton Friedman. In some cultures, that number is much higher. In some cultures, it's much lower. Even Michael Porter, who we've studied extensively this semester, disagrees with Milton Friedman. Michael Porter actually says that the goal of business should be to create shared value. That is, to focus on creating value for both shareholders and for society. Michael Porter isn't arguing that businesses should ignore the economic needs of shareholders or ignore the profit motive. Instead, he says that businesses should look for that overlap between societal needs and the firm's economic needs. For example, GE launched Eco-Imagination, an initiative in 2008, where they focused on providing cleaner and more efficient sources of energy, reducing emissions, and providing abundant sources of clean water anywhere in the world. But also, GE was looking to sell its suite of renewable energy and eco-friendly products, so it was a win-win for society and for the business. Porter also gives a number of recommendations to connect those economic and societal needs. Businesses should look to expand their customer base and serve unserved demographics, such as the bottom of the pyramid, the group of consumers with very low disposable income. They should expand traditional supply and value chains to include more non-traditional partners, such as NGOs. And of course, the Milton Friedman camp does push back a little bit on Michael Porter's ideas. Some people think this commitment to social responsibility can hurt a company's bottom line, and figuring out when to prioritize societal needs and when to prioritize economic needs of a firm is a difficult balancing act. Others argue that corporate social responsibility oftentimes masquerades as something that's intended to help society at large, but only helps the business itself, although that might be a rather pessimistic view of corporate social responsibility. Turning from CSR to governance, let's talk a little bit more about the role of corporate governance in your typical publicly traded business. Corporate governance provides mechanisms to direct and control an enterprise and ensure that a business pursues strategic goals successfully and legally. Corporate governance offers checks and balances on management decisions, asks the tough questions when needed, and attempts to address the principal-agent problem. The principal-agent problem refers to the fact that in a publicly traded company, the management team, so the CEOs and CFOs, are not the same people as the shareholders or the owners. So the principal, the owners, the shareholders, have different incentives than those of the management. Whereas the management knows more about the business, so there's an information asymmetry between the two parties. That's why in publicly traded companies, a board of directors is a necessary requirement. The board of directors is the body that is primarily concerned with corporate governance. It helps to overcome the principal-agent problem by putting a check on the decisions of management and representing a voice for the shareholders. They are elected by shareholders, and a board of directors is typically composed of inside directors, so there will be a couple members or several members of the company's management on the board, as well as outside directors. It's a best practice to at least have half the directors be outside directors. Volkswagen, which came under some heat for its unethical and illegal behavior last year, had only one outside director out of 20 members of its board of directors. The board of directors is responsible for selecting, evaluating, and compensating the CEO, reviewing, monitoring, and approving major strategic initiatives, and ensuring compliance with laws and regulations. There are several mechanisms you can use to implement corporate governance. There's executive compensation. By giving a CEO stock options in a company, you're aligning their incentives with those of the shareholders. There's the market for corporate control. Essentially, if a company is very poorly managed, it becomes a target to be acquired by an outside business who will then replace management with a more competent team. And finally, auditors, government regulators, and industry analysts. You might add to this list media and interested public as well. All U.S. publicly traded companies have to report their financial statements on a quarterly basis and make them public. These statements are audited by outside accounting firms. They're monitored by government regulators, the SEC in this case, and industry analysts who represent outside investors often track their financial performance closely.